G'day guys, Socket here. Today's viewer's question comes from Vikash, who says, I want to know what tools are needed to properly tune car audio. Could you please suggest all of the important tools required for tuning? I recently started learning and I want to make sure I have everything essential. Well, Vikash, I'll do my best to answer your question. And look, I certainly use a mic, a laptop and a copy of REW. That's just the way that I do it. But as I always say, there is a million ways of doing car audio tuning, and therefore, lots of different bits of equipment and software and stuff that people use. So what I'll do is try to take you through several different options of the more common way that people do car audio tuning, so that you can choose the one that best suits you. So let's dive on in and take a closer look. So I guess the equipment and software and stuff that you choose to do your car audio tuning will depend on a bunch of things. So for example, what equipment do you have available? What is your budget? How is your car set up? In terms of, does it have a DSP, or are you doing your EQ work using a head unit? What is your skill level? There's a whole bunch of different factors that will influence your choice of equipment and how you're going to approach car audio tuning. Now, as I said, the way that I do things is I use a laptop and a microphone and REW, and my tutorial series is basically showing you guys how I go about doing car audio tuning. But that said, as I've always said, there are a million ways of doing tuning. My way is not necessarily the right way, and there's a bunch of ways people approach it. So, for example, there are people that just do tuning by ear, and so the only equipment that they need is a copy of some pink noise, right? Then there are other people who will just use a mobile phone or a cell phone with an app, and they'll do all of their recording and and stuff like that using their mobile phone, right? And then there are other people who will use multiple microphones with 6, 8, 10 microphones on an array that with special audio interfaces and other complicated equipment to do their tuning as well. So there are lots of different ways to approach car audio tuning, and I will take you through some of the more common setups and things like that, so you can take a bit of a look and make a choice for yourselves, but we are all doing something in common. So what I mean is that regardless of whether you're using a phone and an app to do your car audio tuning or a multiple mic array, we are all kind of doing the same thing. We are playing a test signal, we're taking a recording, we're then interpreting the results that we get, and then we're making some adjustments to our system, and then we repeat that process over and over and over until we've got a car audio tune that we're kind of happy with. But just because you've purchased a paintbrush, even if it's a very expensive paintbrush, it doesn't suddenly make you a great artist. In fact, it's the same with car audio. Regardless of the equipment that you've chosen to use in your car audio tune, you need to know how to use it. You need to understand how basic car audio tuning works. And more importantly, when you see the results on your screen or whatever, you know how to make adjustments to your system to get the result that you kind of want. So car audio tuning is so much more than just the equipment. But all of that said, let me run you through the 4 steps that we talked about before and some of the basic things that you will need to get set up to do car audio tuning. But before we even start looking at what equipment we're going to use for taking measurements and things like that, the first question we need to ask ourselves is, can I control and manipulate what my speakers and what my system is playing in my car? And what I mean by that is, does your car have a digital signal processor, or more commonly known as a DSP, or at least in your head unit are you able to control things like EQ and other things to be able to change what your speakers are playing? Because if the answer is no, then there is little point in proceeding down the car audio tuning process if you have taken some measurements but you have no way of making those changes in your car system. Now, I know there'll be a bunch of people that have been around car audio for a long time and will be saying, yeah, but Socket, back in the old days before we had DSPs, we were able to do car audio tuning, and those guys would be absolutely right. and back in the old school days we used speaker positioning and equal path lengths and passive crossovers and things to achieve the types of things that we get in a DSP today. So does that mean that if I don't have a DSP that I can't do car audio tuning? Well, no, you don't technically need a DSP to do car audio tuning, as long as your head unit has some sort of way of being able to manipulate your speakers, and that means, you know, some of them have 6 or 8 bands of EQ, some of them might even allow you to put in some delays and things like that. But you will always be more restricted than you will if your car has a fully dedicated DSP. Now, does that mean that I need the most expensive DSP? You know, absolutely not. As long as it's got some basic EQ, ability to put in some EQ bands, some crossovers, and being able to put in some time alignment or delays, you'll be able to do a decent car audio tune. So whenever you are designing a new car audio system, I always say to people, make sure you include a DSP in your build design, so that you have the ability to control all of your speakers and you know, get that crystal clear, you know, image thing going on the dash. But as I said, if your system doesn't have a DSP, you know, that's not the, it doesn't mean that you can't do a car audio tune, it just means that it's much more difficult. So let's take a look at some of the ways that people approach car audio tuning and some of the equipment and stuff that they use. And we'll start with the guys who are the extreme tuners, the super skilled guys that do all of their tuning by ear. And so these are the guys that will just use some pink noise. They might use a laptop to hook up to the DSP and, you know, and change the settings and stuff. But outside of that, they're not using any other equipment at all, just their ears and their skills. And you know, I take my hat off to those guys. It takes, you know, years and years of practice and training to know what to listen for, and you know, it's certainly something that I've never been able to do, and it's not really suitable to people who are new to the car audio scene. And you know, honestly, those guys that can tune by ear are probably not watching these videos anyway. So let's just put those guys aside. You know, they really are the elite of the car audio tuners, and yeah, in a special class of their own. But for the rest of us, we're all going to follow a pretty common process where we're going to generate a measurement signal. We're going to play that signal through our speakers and record the response. We're then going to look at the results of those measurements and interpret what we're seeing, and then make some changes to our system, and then remeasure, and then sort of go round the loop over and over and over until we kind of got our car audio tune kind of done. So one of the ways that you could do this is, for example, using pink noise with a USB microphone, sitting in the car, waving it from side to side, you know, using the moving mic method. And if you were at the stage where you were doing your time alignment, you'd be looking at the results on the screen and seeing how the speakers were summing up, and then maybe making some adjustments to your delays and remeasuring it to see whether the, you know, the summation through the crossover has improved or not. Another way might be, you know, if you were using a sweep signal, then you would be using for example, an analog microphone where the microphone is at a fixed position in the headrest in the car, because if you're moving the microphone while using a sweep measurement, you won't get proper results. They'll just be a big fat mess. And so, you know, recording that sweep measure and then looking at the results, and if you're doing the time alignment, you might then be aligning your phase and impulse responses, and then, you know, taking some, you know, measurements and then doing some delay into your DSP, and, you know, doing it this way. So I guess the point is that that process of test signal recording, reading the results and making adjustment, we all do that, but the methods by which we do them by completely change and completely dictate what type of equipment we're going to use, because they're not all interchangeable. So in reality, the way we go about choosing our tuning method and our equipment is really largely dictated by, number one, what we have available and our budget and our skill level. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by that. So let's say that I'm just getting into car audio and I don't want to spend a bunch on, microphones or things, or maybe I'm a student and I can't afford a laptop and a fancy microphone. Well, you can certainly get into car audio tuning just using your mobile or cell phone and an app. And so there are a bunch of free and paid apps for car audio, both for Apple and Android. I will do a standalone tutorial on this topic, the apps and how to use your phone to do car audio tuning. It's something that's big enough to cover in its own video, right? And I will get around to doing that at some point. But certainly just using your phone, playing the test signal, recording how the speakers play that, capturing it on your telephone, and then using the app to analyze the results, and then using the little graphs in the app to tell you whether you're summing up or whatever else, is a perfectly good way of getting into car audio. Now, will you get the greatest results ever? Maybe not. The telephone microphones are not fantastic. Even buying a cheap lapel microphone or a Dayton microphone that can plug into your telephone will make a huge improvement in the quality of your measures. But as I said, if you want to just use a microphone and an app, you can certainly get a car audio tune out of it, right? At the other end of the spectrum, there are people that will go to no expense and use crazy, complicated and expensive mic arrays, right, where they will buy 6 or 7 or 8 microphones and set them up on a special frame that bolts onto the headrest of the car, and they will use audio interfaces to control and measure all the 6 or 8 signals that are coming in at once, and and all of this completely crazy stuff. It's if money is no object, then certainly you can go down that route. It takes a lot more skill to understand how to set and use that equipment up and average all your results, and and a bunch of other things. Is it more accurate than using a phone to take your measures? Yes, it certainly will be. Is it more accurate than maybe using the moving mic method? Yeah, maybe, probably. But does everybody need to do it? Can everybody afford it? Absolutely not. Can you get into car audio tuning without a multiple mic array? Yes, you can, of course. So there is the entry level, using the phone, versus the super complicated and expensive mic array way of doing car audio tuning, and then there's a bunch of things in between, and that's what I've tried to cover in my tutorials, is that kind of middle road where you're using a laptop and a microphone, and either using the moving mic method or the fixed mic position sweep method, depending on whether you want to do your car audio tuning using impulse and phase, or whether you more favor looking at summation and using your ears more to do your tune. There's lots and lots of ways to do it, and there's no correct way to do it. It really depends on the equipment that you have available to you, and your budget, and and what works for you. So another aspect that I really haven't touched on is the type of software that you can use. So there are many different types of software that people use for car audio tuning. Now, I use Room EQ Wizard because it's free, and it's a very well-known piece of software that a lot of people around the world use for car audio tuning. But there are other programs like Smart V8 or Smart V9, I think it is now, Homey Impulse, Open Sound Meter, a whole bunch of other types of software. In fact, in many DSPs now, the manufacturers include tuning software in their DSP software. So if you think about the Helix DSP, it has its Audio-Tech Fisher PC tool software, which I've done a whole tutorial series on how to use that and do your tuning all within the DSP software. Your time alignment and your EQ and your level matching and all of that stuff can be done outside of REW and just using your tools. And I know that Audison and other brands of DSPs have similar type of tuning software included in their products as well. So the range of software that you can choose, not only the equipment that you can use for car audio tuning, is wide and varied as well. Now, in my tutorial series, as I said, I use a microphone, a laptop, and a copy of REW. The reason I use those things is because that's the tools that I use to do my car audio tuning, and I am using a really old laptop. I think it's from 2012 or something like that. It's certainly not brand new. REW I use because it's a nice free and well-known piece of software, and it doesn't need a lot of processing power to run on my old computer. And I use the cheapest USB mic I can get hold of. I'm not using the U-Mic 2 because it's $200 or $300 more expensive, and the U-Mic 1 meets my needs no problems at all. So but I know not everybody has a laptop and everybody can afford to buy a $200 microphone. But that's perfectly okay. You can still get into car audio tuning using whatever equipment that you have. If you want to follow along my my tutorials step by step, then yeah, absolutely. The minimum things you're going to need is a laptop, a USB or an analog microphone, and a copy of some pink noise, and a copy of REW. Absolutely, but that doesn't mean you can't get into car audio if you don't have those things. So Vikash, I hope that has helped answer your question. For everybody else, I hope you enjoyed that video, and once again, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode.